But like, he talks about creating the feeling that you would feel.
Describe to me in one or two words what you feel. And I was just like, welcome back to another episode of the Be Somebody podcast. I'm Bobby Macy, your host, and today we have a special guest because all of my guests are special. This is a dear friend. His name is Bryan Hurd. And the crowd goes wild.
Oh, man.
Welcome.
I envision myself, on like the walk-up song, walking on the stage, shaking your hand, maybe giving you a hug.
Dude, it would be a hug.
Would it be like that?
100%.
Yeah.
It would be a deep, thick embrace.
Well, we've already done that.
Yes. And it'll happen again.
It'll happen again. Here we are.
Bryan, I invited you here for a reason.
Yeah.
And that reason has a lot to do with your goodness, with your attitude, with your smile, with your electricity, your charisma, all of that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason this show is called Be Somebody. And I happen to know that you encompass intentional living. Tell people a little bit about yourself. The elevator pitch, so to speak.
Yeah, the elevator pitch. First off, thank you. I receive your compliments with gratitude. Thank you. My favorite, whenever I'm asked to introduce myself, I always love to say, I'm the assumed identity of Bryan Hurd. So, it's like, it's funny. It's like, who am I really, right? And I'd say, well, I'm a husband, I'm a father. Those are absolutely the first two things, I'm an entrepreneur.
You're a male model. I see that high and tight.
That's right. I was in some early films when I was younger. It didn't work out, but I tried. Just kidding. I wasn't ever in any of those things. I feel lucky. I've been in the same profession for over 20 years. I knew at an early age that relationships and mentorship are like really important in my life. And I happened to find a profession that serves me well. I help people find out where they're going to find home, and that seems purposeful to me still. Been doing it for over 20 years, which is crazy to say out loud. Yeah. And then, as time's gone on, like everybody, right, we engage in conversations with ourselves as time's gone on. About 4 years ago, I started a men's group called the Evolution Project. That's something that I really enjoy. I love interpersonal work. And I really love interpersonal work, specifically with men, because I feel called to that. Like that, I feel like is a ministry that I've been called to.
Why?
I'm going to do shout outs throughout this. Is that okay?
Please.
So a couple of years ago, I was at a seminar kind of thing. It was down south. It was by this guy named Kevin Hall. He wrote a book called Aspire. He talks about a lot about like the etymology of words in his book. And he did this, thing. It was really nice. It was out in Entrada. I brought down one of my friends with me. We went down there. It was a good thing. And he said, you have been perfectly positioned to serve the person that you once were. And then he said, and I remember writing this in my journal when he said it, because it like hit me right in the heart. He goes, you heal a wounded and broken heart by putting purpose and meaning and going out and serving the person that you once were, or the person that are becoming, right? And I remember when he said that, I was like, that's right. That's totally right. Because if I can put meaning to challenging things I've gone through in my life, now all of a sudden they're not so bitter. I feel like I can tell when I talk to someone that it has unresolved issues within them, because the way they talk about, right? Like if we live too much in the past, that's often a recipe for depression, right? You ever heard the saying, if you live too much in the future, it's a recipe for anxiety. So how can we choose to live in the present, right? Dual meaning of present, because it's a gift. Now, being with you here, this opportunity. And so I just feel like, that's like the juice of life. How present can I be in this moment? Because everything I need is present in this moment.
Yeah.
And if I believe that, it's kind of cool because you get to see kind of the muses at work.
So how do you do that without people being like, dude, Bryan, you are kooky?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you didn't get this on film, but I did do a chant. Did a little mantra beforehand.
Do it again.
Namo Gurudev Namo.
Beautiful. I've heard you chant that
I love
twice
it.
today.
Yes.
But also I've heard you chant that in a different scenario, which I'll talk about later.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, man. And I want you to know I'm talking from a perspective of awareness. I'm not talking from a perspective of perfection.
Yeah.
Okay. But, and I think what is true is the more consciousness that I can bring to my ego. Because the reality is like, if I'm really always worried about what other people are going to think of me, you're actually never really going to get an authentic version of me. You're just going to get the layer of me that I feel safe showing you. Now, we have to have consciousness around this, right? So, for example, when I am in a real estate setting, I'm very attentive and focused on the other person. They get glimpses of me and who I am, but I do have a professional Bryan that I'm trying to be, at least until the relationship is like got some foundation to it.
Of course.
Okay, which logically makes sense for everybody. But I think the most fun is like, imagine a life where there is no second story. I mean, Bobby, for real, how much do we live in story?
Oh, thank you, Joseph Campbell.
Dude, think
the
about
hero's
that.
journey.
Yeah. But I mean, how much, and think about it though, we're creating story to ultimately protect some level of identity that we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just think about like, how much of my life am I living in story? How much do I do out of story? How much do I do to protect the ego that I have of an image that I want to portray, right? It's a pretty like layered cake, However, I have found that when I can take a couple deep breaths and I can just settle in and I can go, oh, dude, I'm hanging out on a Monday afternoon with my friend Bobby. And, my purpose today is to be present with you, have an authentic conversation. There are so many directions we can go in this conversation today. And the reality is like, I am unattached to any direction. Maybe the book I want to talk a little bit about.
And we can talk about that because that's a goodie.
There's a little attachment to that. But other than that, I'm here. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. So can I give some context?
Sure.
Of
context away
of some questions that I might ask. I'm going to fill in a few gaps here. You and I meet in 2022. I already knew your brother. You and I then find ourselves on the Scott Porter taco tour. Wonderful voyage. Randy Sparks, Jeff Mask, Daniel O'Donnell.
I mean,
John,
we're going to lift somebody out, but
Ben,
yes, the list goes on. That's right.
Brady, you name it, right? And sorry for anybody who we didn't mention right then. Sayer's so good. But there's this incredible group of entrepreneurs there, and we've stayed in touch.
Yeah.
But since then, I have had the privilege of getting to know you better because you and I did hit it off.
Yeah.
And so then I know that you're a killer real estate agent. I know that you're a people person. You take care of people. I have also learned a lot from you about what we'll call the work.
Yeah.
And this is work on yourself, on your soul, on being okay with certain things and looking into that past and not letting it depress you and being present now and looking into the future and not getting too anxious about it. And you invited me on multiple occasions until it happened to something called the Evolution Project, founded by Bryan Hurd.
There we go.
The assumed identity of Bryan Hurd.
The assumed identity of Bryan Hurd. That's right.
Tell me about the Evolution Project and why did you invite me to it?
Okay. I like that. Well, I believe it's for all men. Truly, I do. Now, are all men going to respond to the call? No. I mean, that's life, right? I like to say the evolution project in its simplest form is a inward compression for an outward expansion. I've said it's like an emotional fight club. Like
That's beautiful.
those are, and if you've been, you're like, yeah, that actually seems pretty accurate. Like those are both really simple ways to describe it.
You need an evolution project bar of soap now.
I know. Fight Club, good movie. Did you like it?
It's I've only seen bits and pieces of it. I have not seen the whole thing start to finish.
It's got a wild ending. I won't wreck it.
Okay, thank you.
If you were my brother, though, I would wreck it. That's one of my favorite things to do to my brothers. I literally will wreck the ending of movies
Spoilers,
that they haven't
baby.
seen. Zero shame. So good. So yeah, I mean, the Evolution Project.
Describe the experience.
Soulful, in nature, reflective, meets you exactly where you're at. The reality is that there's all these kind of little lines that I say, but one of them is you're always onto yourself. The truth is that we're so busy and distracted. Most people know what they need to do. It's just easier to stay distracted in the things that we can have a level of quote unquote control of, to just not deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. And it works, right? Everything works until it doesn't. And I just believe that having a space where you can go to slow down to speed up, right? To give voice to the things that are inside of you that you haven't really said out loud before, to process, to heal, to emote, right? Because anything that we ultimately don't let come in and through us manifests. Like it will attach, it will manifest in a way. And it may be next week, and it may be next month, and it may be next year, and it may be 10 years down the road from now, right?
Yeah.
So the truth is like, I like to think of myself like metaphorically, right? Life is a river. And, the river is rivering. It's
Beautiful
flowing.
use of that verb.
Yes.
To river.
To river. To river. And I think the cool part about that is like, when was the last time you sat in or by the river and just took an assessment, right? It's the beginning of the year, so I would imagine at some level most people have done a little bit of self-searching. But the reality is that we are our patterns, we are our beliefs. And so the truth is like, I can do the vision board, I can create the goals, but the reality is like, if I don't change, if I don't start to do if I don't ever do the real work, right? Like ultimately what I'm doing is I'm manifesting the last year into the next year, into the next year, into the next year, into the next year, with maybe a few little twists and turns.
Yeah. Great way to put that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's your life. Like that's the question I'd ask you, right? Like, and I say that like with love. And I also say that with, it's your life. Literally, we were just outside talking with Jeff Mask. What's up, Jeff Mask? And Jeff says, I'm headed to, I think he said to go conduct a funeral. Did he say that? Or just attend a funeral?
He's definitely going to help set up and be a part of it.
And it's somebody that lives in his neighborhood, 46 years old, got sick, ended up passing away.
And normal sickness.
Normal sickness.
Flu sickness, not cancer sickness.
Right. So this is what I find interesting. Is that what it takes? Is death or near death what it takes before someone says, it's my life? Now, I think there's something beautiful about death personally, because it strips away all the crap.
Yeah.
People that have been in situations where death is real, all of a sudden those things that you think, you find out what actually matters.
It's not the car you drive.
None of it.
Yep.
And what I found is death strips me back and puts me in a place where it's like, oh, it's about love. It's about compassion. It's about service. It's about integrity. It's about the legacy, not from a standpoint of like bravado. It's what am I giving to my children? Patterns, beliefs, experiences, because those are the things that last, right? And now all of a sudden we're actually in the conversation. Now the conversation's actually happening.
Do you ever find it frustrating when you have experienced a certain level of self-work? You're at a certain point where there's a level of awareness, is the word you use there.
Yeah.
So then, do you ever find yourself in a position where, I don't want to use the word judgment, but do you ever find yourself in conversations where you're just like, almost like a therapist, like diagnosing people, like, oh yeah, you got crap to work on. Oh yeah, you haven't addressed that thing from your past. Oh yeah, you're just, like, is that ever a temptation for you?
Yeah.
Does that run through your mind? Because I know that you've put in a lot of work to
Yeah.
into your own life to get where you're at today.
Consciousness,
Yeah.
awareness, what I bring to my engagement, my life force that I'm utilizing in this moment, for example, right now. So my experience has been that anything that God has given you a gift in to do good in the world, there's a dark side to it. And I just want you to know, like, there's absolutely a part of me that if my energy and my intention is not correct, I feel like I could tear somebody apart if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Judge them or just pick them apart. Because like patterns are pretty easy to see. But the reality is here's what I found. One, that's not coming from a place of love, first and foremost, which is not a good place. Secondly, though, a man convinced against his own will is still the same opinion, right? We know that. So the reality is that if I want to enact change, and this could be as simple as my good friend, or what my experience is, the closer someone is into me, the more I need to be attuned to this, right? You can do a lot of damage to people you really care about because you know all their buttons and they know all your buttons, right? So like, how can you engage in those conversations with more compassion, with more love, with more understanding, and also realizing that ultimately nobody changes because someone tells them to change. They change because they choose to. Like that is the highest frequency, right? So, I love this analogy. There's this story and there's a dog and he goes in to see his therapist. Have I told you this story, Bobby?
No, but this is awesome.
It is wonderful.
I'm laughing because of something different that I'll tell you about later.
Okay. I'm excited to hear that.
It has to do with Seinfeld.
Okay. So this dog goes in and sees his therapist and he looks a little scattered. And the therapist goes, why don't you sit down and tell me what's going on? He goes, well, every time that I sit down, lately, out of the corner of my eye, I see this thing go past the corner of my eye when I turn. It's not there anymore. And it's just kind of bugging me. And he goes, well, could be a lot of things. And he goes, why don't you just kind of relax a little bit and let's get together next week and talk about it and see if that's still coming up or whatever. But, let's just bring some awareness to it. Dog's like, okay, he leaves, comes back a week later. But this, he looks a little bit more frazzled than the week before, right? And he's like, you want to talk about it today? He's like, actually, it's getting worse. Now that you mentioned me to pay attention to it, like I see it all the time. I'm getting ready to go to bed and I turn this way and I see it and then I turn and it's gone. It's not there anymore. And he's like, okay. And he's like, do you know what it could be? And he's like, I don't know what it could be. I've got a security system in my house. I've got all these things and no one's there. No one else is there. And he goes, do you think maybe it could be your tail? And the dog goes, it could be my tail. You're totally right. Thanks. And he leaves. Comes back 2 weeks later. And at this point, his hair's all over the place. He hasn't slept, bloodshot eyes, horrible. And he walks and he sits down and he goes, I'm going crazy. I see it all the time now. And I've been trying to catch it now. So I'm spinning around. I'm looking for it. It's there and everything. And the therapist is like, okay, well, tell me what it looks like. He's like, well, it's bushy and it's, brown and it looks like this and all this stuff. And the therapist walks over and grabs his tail and shows it to him. And he goes, does it look like this? And all of a sudden the dog goes, oh my gosh, I'm chasing my tail, right? And I mean, the essence of the story is like how much awareness we bring to something. Like the therapist told him, like, you're probably chasing your tail. And he's like, yeah, I am. And then he goes back and does it right again because we are our patterns. And then finally, in a moment of clarity, right, he realizes, and by the way, I filtered it. He actually says the S word, oh shiz. But I know my mom's going to watch this. And
Mama Hurd.
yeah, shout out to mom. But the reality is like, isn't that the truth? And so like what I found is, as I raise a heightened state in myself, I could look around and see everybody and say, oh my gosh, Bobby, you do this. Oh, you do this, you do that. But the reality is if I'm a heightened state, you know what I'm actually doing? I'm going, what in Bobby is triggering inside of me? Now all of a sudden I go, I've got all these mirrors around me. And if I spot it, I got it. And I need to probably put some attention on it. And now all of a sudden, now I'm out of this judgment stage and I'm just like, oh man, I'm so grateful that Bobby's in my life because he brings to my awareness this or that. And man, the work is the work, right? The work is the work, and it takes what it takes. And now I've all of a sudden got all these teachers around me. And life goes, I'll teach you as much as you want to learn if you're ready for it. But what happens is if I stay in my ego, what I do is I say, stupid Bobby. I mean, can you believe that? Every time. Right?
Dude, I think this is so good. That little nugget of gold, because that's in business, that's in marriage, that's in
pick your poison, dude.
Parenthood, childhood, siblings, church. Like, yeah.
Like, think of it this way. It always has something to do with you.
Yeah.
It's an unresolved issue inside of you.
Oh.
And now all of a sudden those people are gifts. They're not. And here's the deal. I can choose how much I want to engage with someone in my life, right? Like,
yeah.
If there's someone that just drives me crazy, like, yeah, I don't have to hang around them more to be like, I just really want to be aware of my pattern,
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is I'm just paying attention and going, man, these are these feelings. And what I found is if it's showing up in one area, it's most likely showing up in other areas. But until we raise awareness to something, right, we are just, we're destined to stay in a cosmic loop with it because there is no change. Our beliefs are still, right? I mean, it's that whole concept, right? Beliefs, thoughts, actions, results, right? And then what happens is results embed into deeper beliefs.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
So I just become a self-fulfilling prophecy because I'm never good at taking tests, Bobby.
Yep. Fixed mindset, baby.
And this always happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
I just sit there and go, really? True? Is that true? So like question, like how hard do I want to fight for my weaknesses? Because I get to keep them if I do.
It's so interesting that you say that because there was this podcast I was listening to for a while called The Full Cup. And I think it is Craig Berthold. He's a therapist.
You want to shout out to him right now?
And yeah, I don't know him, but Craig, I like your stuff.
He's watching right now.
And I hope he gets this.
We're going to send it to him.
So he has this, I got through a few episodes and I really like it and I'll get through more, but it's his daughter interviewing him. And he talks about how he calls them deer paths. And he's like, have you ever seen a deer path in the wild? And he's like, it's almost unnoticeable, but it's like, if you see a deer path that one deer takes, like almost unnoticeable, but if 100 deer take that path to the water, so to speak,
yeah,
it's noticeable, like any sort of trail, right? The plants stop growing there, the dirt becomes more visible, etc. And he's like, every thought you have or conviction that you have about yourself is like a deer path. And you have to decide whether it's going to be 1 deer, 100 deer, 1,000 deer. And so if you say something negative about yourself over and over and over again, you're creating some heavy duty deer trails.
Totally.
And those are neural pathways in your brain that start to believe it.
Yeah.
And then similarly with positive outcomes, right? But it's one of those things where I think it's like, okay, we've got to live life, and we have to have this understanding that, like, okay, I don't want to be the guy who's always bashing on myself. My thoughts do matter because they're going to turn into a belief system, which is going to manifest at some point,
Yeah.
right? So here's a question, Bryan.
Yeah.
Somebody watching this, how do I change that? I call myself an idiot all the time. How do I change that? Or I actually believe that I am X thing. How do they change that? Where would you tell them? And I know you're not a licensed therapist or this or that, but like for you, what would you do?
Mm.
I know one thing you do.
Yeah. I mean,
You'd start with a deep breath.
yeah, that's what I was just going to say. I'm actually in a deep breath thought there, right there, because I'm sitting there going, like, my first thought is to anyone that is in a negative thought pattern constantly within themselves. Like, I feel for that person. You know, what's the thing that you tell yourself 1,000 times a day that nobody else knows? And, like, truly, it makes me sad because I know that's true. I know there's actually a lot of people that are in loops. And, you know, some of those things, it was like, we weren't born none of us were born that way. Right. So it's like, so
Could have
what
been
is it?
something that your third grade bully said to you.
Totally. Exactly.
Or your third grade crush.
Yeah. The book, The Four Agreements, he says, like, one of the things is like, it's ultimately like, never, this is the podcast brain right now. But it talks about ultimately like that we make agreements with ourselves, that the tongue is a wand, and that we cast spells on ourselves by the way we talk to ourselves, right?
So interesting.
And it's like that thing that you wield, like, be careful what you wield, because you are casting spells on yourself and on other people all the time, you know? Because that's that inner belief that person wasn't born that way. That spell was cast on them at some point. And it could have been in a flippant moment that you and I would have just stepped over. But in that moment, it stuck, right? So, I mean, like, my first thought is like, one, you are not your thoughts. That's the first thing I would encourage people and just remind you, you're not your thoughts. Secondly, that, you know, it's interesting. Joe Dispenza talks about affirmations, right? So I could say, I am smart, I am smart, I am smart, or whatever, right? And I can say those things over and over again, but like, if I actually don't believe that at some level, it's kind of like I'm just saying it out loud, right?
Yeah.
But like, he talks about creating the feeling that you would feel. And because our body likes familiarity, like our minds like familiarity. So like, what's happened is the person that's in that negative loop, they have created a level of familiarity with that feeling. So of course, like the deer path, like, that is the path the deer have gone on for a long time. And I'll tell you, here's another thing. This is actually a really great one. Just came to me. See this little baby right here?
Oh, I've seen that baby.
So I believe we can create anchors. We can create anchors in our lives that create pattern interrupts, right? So like, for example, at the end of the Evolution Project, I give men a bracelet, right?
I have one.
That's right. And do you remember the purpose of the bracelet? This will be good test. I know I'm putting you on the spot right now.
Oh, I remember you talking about it as an anchor.
Yes.
I do not remember. It's been.
It's time for you to come back, Bobby.
I know. It's been more than a year since I've gone.
I'm telling you, I think the Evolution Project is something men should come to at least once a year, because it's like you are in a completely different place
than I was then.
Than you were then. And it's going to hit completely different.
Yep.
And a lot of people are like, well, why would I come back? I'm like, trust me, the men that I've seen grow the most in this are the men that have come back more than once and done the work in between. And I'm not joking. Like, it is palpable to me when I'm around those people. I'm like, this person is different. Oftentimes they've lost weight. They've gotten out of a story of a loop, right? And these things are anchors, modalities and anchors, right? So the bracelet, what the bracelet represents is at the end of the Evolution Project, I said, Now, you've had awareness around certain things that you want to bring attention to in your life, right? But we want to anchor to something, a belief system around that, right? And so for me, this bracelet, I'll share with people what it means for me. I have an adverse relationship with failure. And ironically, I have this deep desire in me to create and to add value to people's life, right? What an interesting dichotomy. Scared to fail, desperately want to enact change and help people in their life desperately, right? What an interesting side, right? Because if I pick up the stick, I get both sides of the stick, right?
Yeah.
This is a simple reminder to me that like I give myself permission to go about and live a big and inspiring life to myself. And I encourage and invite other people to come along. And there might be times where there's setbacks along the way, and that's okay. Because the thing is I'm anchored to a bigger vision than I am to a smaller version of me that says, don't look stupid. Don't look stupid. What's Bobby going to think? Right?
Yeah.
Because the reality is like, and that would keep me in a small circle of a loop, right?
I love that.
So anchors,
love that.
I think physical anchors, I think breath work, I think meditation, I think smells. Like one of the things I do at the Evolution Project is I have a lot of different oils. And I always make a joke about how, if they sign up now, they'll get in at the ground level of my oil company. But the real truth is like, I can tell you that when I smell peppermint, I have an immediate presence and attunement when I hit peppermint, dude. Peppermint is, I'm awake, I'm clear, I'm focused, I'm present. Boom.
Yeah.
And it anchors me like that, because I have trained myself like Pavlov, right?
Yeah.
That I go, okay, dude, I'm going in that neural pathway. Okay, put a little here, put a little here. 3 deep breaths. I mean, little things like I joke around and say, my little mantras. I still actually don't know what Om Namo Guru Dev Namo means, but it's something about inviting the wisdom of the elders to like teach me and be present, right? Something to that attunement, right? And it's crazy. Like you think about this in these practices, they will often say mantras over and over and over again. One of my favorite songs that I listen to is a mantra. And it starts out and it goes, bong, and it does a little thing, and then it goes. And it's this lady singing the words, I release control. And she just keeps saying it over and over again. And surrender to the flow of love that will heal me. It's freaking 9 minutes, 10 minutes long. And I will sit there and I will do that over and over and over again. And I will feel the feelings of surrendering to the flow. Right?
Yeah.
And letting go, right? To of love that will heal me. What's the emotion of healing me? And I feel it. And what am I doing? I'm getting comfortable with that feeling. This is what letting go feels like. So then when I'm actually in real play, real time, I go, I need to pop this. I need a little peppermint right now. I got to take 3 deep breaths. And my body, my neuro synapses have said, oh, we know what this is, Bryan. It's okay. Fight or flight doesn't kick in as much.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these
fascinating.
These are like layers of it. But I mean, the thing that's crazy is like, we have a lot more say in this thing called life and how we're experiencing it than we often believe or think we do.
That is, Jeff Mask hit on that a little bit. And he talked about creating your own life, right? And designing your own life. But I think that's so true. I've gotten to the point in some of this where, look, I like to cold plunge. Yeah. That sounds funny to say because I actually don't like to be in cold water, but I like to cold plunge because of the result, right? Because I have done it enough times now where I know there's a sense of clarity there. I often am saying things to myself in that cold water, like, you're sitting with this discomfort now. This is the hardest thing you're going to have to do all day. You do this, the rest of your day, doesn't matter what happens,
Right.
because you're doing this now. You can sit in this discomfort. And it helps you not to become too soft. It, but then on this other end of the spectrum, there's the power of breath, which I'm still learning about. And I've experienced breath work at the Evolution Project. I've experienced breath work with our dear friend, Randy Sparks.
Yeah. Shout out Randy Sparks.
Love you, Randy.
Sparks of gratitude.
And I experienced breath work on that Mexico trip with all of us, and with what Scott Porter put together a few years ago.
Yeah.
And when you intentionally breathe, I'm like, oh my goodness. And we get a glimpse of it. People who have never done breath work, I'm like, okay, here's an introductory thing, right? Go watch the episode of Limitless on Disney Plus with Chris Hemsworth about breathing.
Yeah.
Go watch that. And start with perhaps box breathing, which has become incredibly popular.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if you have never done it, I'm going to look right into this camera and say this. If you've never done a guided breathwork session, usually 30 to 40 minutes, that is something you should experience. That, to me, blew my mind. It's something that I want more of now, because it helped me to feel more in tune with my own spirit. Mm-hmm. I felt a sense of peace. At times I would feel other emotions that were like, what is going on? Sometimes physical, sometimes just, emotion. Yeah. And I remember this last breathwork session that I did, you showed up right after me at Randy's house. But when I kind of was coming out of it, Randy was like, describe to me in 1 or 2 words what you feel. And I was just like incredibly loved. That's what I felt through breath, right? And there was something grounding about it. There was something so real about it and raw about it and so godlike about it. God breathed into man the breath of life, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm just like feeling all these things, but the majority of what I felt was I felt loved by an unseen being that I call God. That was powerful to me, but that was through breath, right? And when my wife was going through some really challenging mental health stuff that was also manifesting in physical health, she used to think I was crazy getting in cold water. But when she was experiencing panic attacks and different things like that, it was like, as we noticed that her anxiety was surging, it was on the rise. Sometimes I'd be like, bathtub now, cold plunge now, right? And we'd go do that, and she hated those 3 minutes in that water. But it often averted us from experiencing a panic attack that was coming, right? Because the great distraction of cold water and that triggering that fight or flight before the anxiety could trigger it. Very powerful. So I've experienced some of these things both on my own and at the Evolution Project. Yeah. But it's interesting coming full circle. Why should somebody go to the Evolution Project? I would say they should go to the Evolution Project because part of that inward compression that you're talking about is addressing the things in your past and currently. And part of that outward expansion is coming back with the kind of a new, fresh mindset of like, how am I getting in my own way? Am I challenging my own belief systems? Am I willing to grow? Yeah. And oftentimes when I hang out with you, I end up leaving and thinking to myself, man, I got to be more present. And then I also end up thinking to myself, I'm not thinking big enough. I can do whatever the bleepity bleep I want in my life. And I believe it. Yeah. And that's something that maybe part of it's the different experiences that we've shared together. Yeah. Maybe it's part of it that I have experienced being in a cold river with you, in a temazcal, however we say that, like a hot little sauna type igloo thing in Mexico. I've experienced some light yoga with you, some breathwork sessions, and I don't know, all of those things, like as I do them, I feel like I'm a more refined version of myself because I'm a more aware version of myself.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because like, isn't that the point? Like when I sit there and think, I remember I read in this book and it said, that humans are not the most powerful species on the planet, right? There's actually other species that have more things going for them than humans. But the thing that makes humans unique more than any other species is the fact that like we can collaborate and work together. We can, and I mean, like here we are on this experience called life, and like good friendships. I believe that good friendships, good relationships yield the best of us. They extract the best from us. Like that's a good indication that you're in the right circle, and it's not a competition. The reality is my experience has been that first and foremost, I am doing the work because the work is the work, dude. Wherever I go, there I am, magically. I know some people that have ran for so long from themselves, they're tired, but they don't even know what they're tired about. And I mean, some of the things was things that was pushed upon them. It was given to them. It wasn't by choice. Others, it was by choice, right? The point is, that's irrelevant. The truth is, like I just invite people. It's like, it's time to stop running. It's time to come home,
Yeah.
It's time to come home to yourself. Magically, when you start to come home to yourself, all these things that you thought were problems in other people in your life, you'll start to realize like, man, it was me. I played a big part in that. I created that. Whether, I consciously did or unconsciously did. Most of the time unconscious, right?
I've had that.
Totally. I think we all have. This is the gift of awareness.
Yeah.
But until we're aware, we're just reacting. We're just living in a pattern. We're living in a story that we have about ourselves, which scares a lot of people. Because the thing is, I go, do you know what? My story and my patterns are working good enough. Like, don't change them. Don't try to even raise awareness to me in them. Like, I'm okay enough. But the thing that I want to just slap people with, right? And this is like where I feel like emotion is, I just go, dude, it's your life. It's your life. There's no guarantees. Nobody knows their expiration date. It's your life. No one should be more engaged in your life than you.
Yeah.
No one should be more attuned to or, wanting. I mean, I think it's such an interesting dichotomy because life is a series of paradoxes. That's all it is, man. So it's like the greatest form of self-love you could show yourself is to actually start to do the work. And like, there's just paradox in all these things,
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I'm going to lose my identity. Well, I'm going to find my identity. I'll tell you what happens though, is as you start to do the work, you find out what actually matters and what actually sticks.
Isn't that beautiful? That's biblical.
Totally.
That is in Matthew and Mark and some of these gospels when Jesus essentially says, got to lose yourself to find yourself.
Yeah. Jesus, aside from the fact that he was an incredible teacher, right? And let's just say the Son of God, right? He's got some bonus facts going for him. The things that he taught are just as true. Like, I find it interesting that sometimes people step over that. But I mean, if you want to have fun, just go back and read the first 4 Gospels in the New Testament and just be like, I'm going to learn from Jesus for a little while and see what's going on. And what I feel was so amazing about Jesus is he was appropriate in the moment. He had such an attunement to, a high frequency. We could call that divinity. We could call it the Holy Ghost. That he knew what was appropriate and what the person needed in that moment.
Beautiful.
Which I'm like, dude, I am by no means Jesus Christ, but I've had moments where I have felt the same thing.
Yeah.
I've had enough presence and attunement in the moment where I have known, sometimes for myself, often for myself, what was appropriate in the moment. But I've even been blessed to be in places where it's like I knew it was appropriate in that moment with that person. And then this is where the juice really starts to happen. Because as we have shared experiences that change us at a core level, there is something that is formed between two people that becomes undeniable. And it's like, I know that we had that experience, that moment, and there is something forged in that moment that we shared together. It's like forged on my soul, it's forged on your soul. And I think that's where I come back to relationships. Like, these are the things that ultimately matter, right? And everybody is kind of this like grand tapestry of forged experiences that make up this consciousness that we call Bryan Hurd or Bobby Macy. But at the core, what I really am is I am. I love that. Like, that's what Christ said. He didn't say like this long explanation. He's like, I am the Son of God, and I'm also the Savior of the world, and I'm the Lamb of God, and I'm all these. He literally said it all in the most simplistic word. He just said, I am that I am. Like, right? Like,
yeah.
And people in his presence knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Undeniable, right? So it's like, it's so cool. Like, anytime that I can, I can look at something with like a gospel lens and have a direct experience with it and be like, oh.
Yeah, powerful.
Yeah, well, I mean, those, like, to me, that is what I describe as sacred.
Yeah.
And you get enough sacred moments in your life, you start to build a completely new pattern of thoughts and beliefs where you go, I am enough. Not even enough. I am. Like, I don't need permission. I am, and you operate from this place, and it's like, it's awesome, right? So, I mean, and what's cool, like, if somebody's watching this right now and they're like, I'm vibing with this, I'd be like, you're probably a really good candidate to come to the Evolution Project then.
Yeah.
Like, that's because in essence, like, our conversation ultimately, what we've had is really, it's about life, but I feel like it's condensed a lot of the dialogue, conversation, feeling that is received from people that come from that experience.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Okay. So I have experienced the Evolution Project not once, but twice.
Yes.
I need to go again. Evolutionproject.com.
MyEvolutionProject.com.
MyEvolutionproject.com.
Yeah.
All right. Now, as selfish as I am, and I want to keep you here, I promised you that I'd ask you about this book.
Okay. I like that. Thank you.
And I think that's a beautiful transition because the Evolution Project gets you to think differently. You have been doing this personal work, that we'll call it, for a long time. And even from a few years ago when I first met you, you were on the journey back then, and now you're at a different stage in that journey. Yeah. And I love watching it. I love seeing you. And then today you dropped this bomb on me and you're like, dude, I've authored a book. And I'm like, oh, what? Tell me about it.
Thank you for asking. So here's kind of the idea behind it. The most common question I get asked when people are like, what is the Evolution Project? It's hard to bottle lightning, But I can be like, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. But if you were to boil down, like, I was like, what is the thing that, like, I'm really passionate about in life? Why do I actually really do the Evolution Project? And it's truly because I believe that as we do the work, that's the greatest gift we can give to everyone around us. The truth is people do want to live a life of meaning. People do want to live a life where they feel on purpose. They feel connected. They feel in alignment. They're a good husband. They're a good father, right? Like I have not talked to a man yet that, you know, would argue with me on those concepts, right?
Yeah.
The question is like, how do we do it, right? And so what I did is I wrote a book, and the title of the book is called The Wolfpack Way, and it's a father's guide to raising conscious sons. And I feel that I'm very much in a place to speak to that with a lot of truth.
Yeah.
I have 4 boys. I've raised 4 sons. The reason I use, you're probably wondering, why Wolfpack, Bryan? And the reason is because when my little boys were little, this is like early in life, we had a house and there was like 5, 6 bedrooms in the house, but the boys all wanted to sleep in the same room. So much to the point that one of the boys' bed was just a mattress on the floor. There was a trundle bed, and then there was a mattress on the floor. And the reality is once Colin got out of the crib, and he was, probably 3, 4 years old, and my boys are all 2 years apart. Colin's the youngest. They just slept in the same room. And it didn't matter that they started the night in their own beds. Almost always, they would, in the middle of the night, crawl into one of their beds, and they literally looked like a little pack of wolves. Like they were like laying all over each other and cuddled into each other and all this stuff. And so I started to call them the wolf pack. And we had this little thing where we go like this, and we go, ow, and we touch our hands together. And that just became a thing. And I'd call them the wolf pack, right?
I love that.
And so like for me, like it's a very endearing thing. But basically what I'm doing is I'm like, these are the principles that I've learned in raising 4 boys, right? And I interlace a lot of principles of Evolution Project in it. But by the end of reading the book, like you got a pretty clear idea of like, at least my methodology, my direct experience of what I have. Because I will tell you, the 2 greatest gifts in my life have been being married to my wife, Chandy, and the family we've created together. The truth is, we've been married. This week is our anniversary. It's our 21st anniversary. Yeah. Right. And we are not the same people that got married 21 years ago.
Of course not.
And we literally have grown up together. And it's hard sometimes. And we're not the exact same. And guess what? She's one of my greatest teachers, my wife, because she knows my bullcrap more than anybody.
Of course.
She knows me better than me sometimes. What a freaking gift, right? And then I got these 4 boys. My oldest is Camden, 19. He's serving an LDS mission in Singapore right now. I'm watching him transition into him starting his path and becoming a man.
Yeah.
Respecting his path and watching him go. I've got a 17-year-old son, Roston. And I mean, each one of my boys, Colin's 15, and then little Anders is 5. I joke around and say Anders is like my little Buddha, because Anders has taught me what it looks like, unconditional love. He just loves me. He just loves me. And he teaches me all the time. And it's like, I got to take a test again. I raised these 3 boys, do the best I can. And then God goes, you know what? I'm not joking. There's a part of me that's like, I literally encourage everyone to have a child 10 years after your last child. Because holy smokes, it's like going back and taking the test all over again. And you're like, I mean, honestly, it's been one of the most, I have grown more in the last 5 years than I feel like I grew in the 15 before that.
Wow.
And I know Anders is a catalyst to that. There's a lot of things going on in there, right? Maybe I'm more open to the conversation with life. But I mean, I just share this because it's like, I feel qualified to lead this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not talking in theory, right? And I'm not saying like
through the paces.
Yeah, like I've been in the ring, right in the ring, and I've stayed in the ring.
The luchador.
I'm a luchador. That's right. And the reality is like, I will never criticize somebody that's in the ring. Right. And like, that's life. That's life. You know,
Yeah.
it's your life. That's the thing I just want to like thump people over the head with. It's your life. Like, you're living your life right now. If you're happy with it and you love the trajectory, great, keep going. If you're upset, great. Add some awareness to it and change. Because you can.
A little spoonful of awareness,
Yeah,
that can really shake things up.
totally.
So this book's in editing right now.
It'll be done in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
I love that.
And then the reality is like, this is going to be like one of the ways that I want to get the conversation of the Evolution Project out there, right?
Yep.
And the truth is, there's like in the works that we'll be doing evolution projects with our boys.
Yeah.
So it's like, men are going to be doing the work over here. Your young men are going to be doing work over there. And then there's going to be stuff we're going to cross over together. And this is the conversation. Because where does the rubber really hit the road? Well, in your marriage and with your boys.
Yeah.
And the reality is like, this is what the work is. You know, that is the work.
And what if somebody doesn't have boys?
I actually think they could get just as much out of it. It won't not all evolution projects will be like, there will be specific, we're going to do one this year where we'll have it with the boys. Right.
Yeah.
But the reality is like the core of the experience is going to be the same. And I mean, yeah, so I have daughters or whatever. Great.
And you could have no kids and go to the Evolution Project and
Yeah.
still come out and be like,
Yeah.
wow.
You could even not be married and go and still come
Yep.
out and be well. I will tell you though, that my experience is like, if you were to ask me, where are the areas where men struggle the most, right? My experience is in their marriage with their kids. Everyone
Yeah.
that is a facilitator that helps run, guess what? They're all right in the arena with us. You know, nobody's talking from theory. And
Yeah.
like, I think that's something that makes it really unique, right? It's like, yeah, I love it. I really love it. And I'm grateful to be able to do it. You know, it's the conversation I want to be leading in my life right now.
Wow. It's beautiful. Okay. So a final question for you.
Yeah.
I ask this to all my guests.
Okay.
So I know you've watched the episode with Randy Sparks.
Watched it.
You also know Eric Soderborg, who was my very first episode.
Dude, do you know what's crazy? Eric and I have hung out twice. Love that guy.
So amazing.
Bobby, I think we should just introduce each other to all our friends. And we naturally would double our friend count.
Yes. That's a beautiful idea.
Like, we're our own filter for our
Yes.
friends. I'm like, do you know Bobby? Do you like Bobby? Do you get along? Okay, great.
Okay. Then you're going to like Bryan.
We're probably best friends.
I like that.
Eric, shout out to Eric.
Yes. Eric is a wonderful human being. I cannot say enough good about him. I cannot say enough good about you. But I do want to ask you a final question.
Yeah.
Bryan, you ready for it?
I was going to say pause for build.
What does it mean to you to be somebody?
Yeah, man. What it means for me to be somebody is to show up in my life, just living my life authentically, fully me. And the reality is like, that's enough. Like, I truly believe like I am somebody, you know, I already am. And I love that poem by Marianne Williamson that says that ultimately, like, when I shine my light, like, I'm ultimately giving permission to everyone else to be like, shine bright, dude. We're all children of God, you know? And like, to me, that's the greatest gift we give one another, you know? So I am somebody. Bobby, you are somebody. And thank you for creating a platform where people can share their song, you know?
Yeah.
So it's beautiful.
It's I just made a video that essentially said, do not die with your music still in you. And I love that. Well, I'm going to leave it with this before I do the outro.
Yeah.
My favorite scripture in all of the Bible, Matthew 5:16. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works
Yeah.
and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Favorite scripture in the Bible. I love this idea of becoming who God knows you can become.
Yeah.
And on that journey, sharing your light.
Totally.
Because you're going to have increased amounts of light the closer to Christ you become, right?
Yeah.
Share it along the way. Sprinkle that dust.
That's right.
And some awareness along with it. All right, my friend, thank you for joining. For those of you who have not yet subscribed, please do so. Also, exciting announcement. These episodes are going to go onto audio version only on all the expected platforms, but you're watching here on YouTube. Thank you. Over and out, my friends.